First of all, I am just thrilled to be with you, and I'm so excited to hear your story, Phil. I know it's very early in New Zealand. It's 3 o'clock in Chicago, but let's dive in. Can you tell me a little bit about 1978 when you first started to plant grapes?
Yes, certainly. It was all basically brought about by the oil price shock in 1974, 75, because prior to that, we were growing a lot of alfalfa,
Uh huh.
which we were dehydrating and sending to Japan to finish Kobe beef beasts over there because they have a great shortage of that sort of natural feed for livestock. And they've got little enough land as it was. But anyway, cut a long story short, we were very, very reliant on oil in the form of diesel for irrigation and for dehydration of this product because it was cut green and then put through a rotary drum dehydrator, which was fueled by oil. And basically, the price of oil went from $2 to $11 a barrel, which doesn't sound much
Ooh,
today, but that's
it does.
550% increase. So
Yes,
that
it is.
basically put us out of business overnight for what we were doing. And the land that we were growing the lucerne or the alfalfa on was right next to the Wairau River. It was light, stony soil, responded very, very well to water, which you had to keep pouring on to make everything grow. But we thought it would be perfect for growing grapes because grapes grown in areas of very high fertility obviously take a lot of controlling, whereas we had a certain amount of self control through the fact that we didn't have a lot of fertility and we had these stones which would add warmth for ripening and so on and so forth. So I approached in those days Montana, which was the only company growing grapes in Marlborough at that point in time. And they'd only arrived in the district in 1973. And they agreed to take me on as their first contract grower because I didn't have
Ah,
a winery and they did. And they had the only working winery in Marlborough. So, we've got a very short history in Marlborough of grape growing and winemaking, but we've made the most of it. So we finished up um, thinking that we would be planting in actually in 1976, but that didn't eventuate because in between the local body of Marlborough, the Marlborough District Council as it is now, was the Marlborough County Council in those days, um, passed a bylaw, which every council in the country had to, that restricted certain things that required a change of use. And they said grape growing, because it wasn't really um, predominant in the county and that at that particular point, required a change of use. So we were the first attempted growers to challenge that. Um, we got 56 objections from all over the district, but mostly from forestry concerns on the other side of the river. They were using a lot of 2,4,5-T, which is Agent Orange, um,
mm,
and they were desiccating prior to planting forestry. And of course, grapes were hugely susceptible to any hormone damage, didn't matter what it was. Humans as well, of course. In fact, a lot of
hmm.
things they were pretty nasty sprays. So they were our biggest um, objectors. So over a period of 18 months, we finished up having our case heard by the local council and they turned us down. We then went to the Court of Appeal, which was presided over by three retired judges. but that took quite some time, as you could well imagine. You can't just flick your fingers and say, we want a hearing tomorrow. So 18 months after that, we successfully challenged and were granted permission to plant. So we were the first guys sort of outside a rather restricted area that they had put a circle around where Montana's three vineyards were in those days. Um, yeah, and hence 1978 when we really got into it. And we, yeah, it was a long drawn out process.
Well, it's fascinating to hear. So many stories start with a dream, and it sounds like your story started with necessity, that you
Yeah.
were had to pivot in your business to survive. So tell me, what were those first few years like as you were one of only two wineries in the region, and how did you do?
Well, we did pretty well. It was sort of the animosity amongst the objectors had basically dissipated after we'd been granted permission, because the local council then said any land in the Wairau Plain south of the Wairau River can be can be planted in grapes as of right. So once we'd achieved that, it wasn't long before we had uh, several Auckland companies, the likes of Cloudy Bay in the early
Mhm.
80s. They all started coming in and planting anyway. So we didn't sort of feel quite so much out on a limb. But had we not had that change in 1977, um, yeah, we might still have been sitting here with no grapes in Marlborough.
And was it exciting? I mean, what was it like? I mean, was it terrifying, or
Oh,
what was,
there were a lot of people for rather obscure reasons that didn't want grapes to be planted. They were traditional
Mm,
farmers, and they were grazing livestock and cropping and using a lot of hormone sprays as well. That was one of the major reasons. But it was rather interesting that as soon as we got grapes in the ground, hormone sprays disappeared, because New Zealand was obviously being used as a dumping ground from the chemical manufacturers in the United States and Europe, because hormone had basically gone out at that point anyway. But we couldn't get any of the new stuff. But as soon as we started expanding our grape plantings, yeah, hormone sprays disappeared, which was great.
and what was your first harvest? What was it, the Sauvignon Blanc, or what was the very first
No,
type
it
of wine you
wasn't.
produced?
Well, there were no Sauvignon Blanc in New Zealand in 1978.
Hmm,
So we planted Müller, which is the German variety that produces a very drinkable but quite sweet wine.
sweet, like a
It had
Moscato.
that bit of that, and New Zealanders didn't drink a lot of wine in those days anyway, so it was probably not a bad choice as an introductory wine. So that's what all the growers, because we became one of 8 contract growers for Montana, and everyone grew Mullaturgo because that's what they told us that's what they wanted us to grow.
And since New Zealanders didn't drink much wine, who was buying your wine?
Well, they started drinking it because it was, as I say, it was very drinkable, particularly to a novice drinker. I mean, you've got to start somewhere. You don't necessarily start on Chablis, do you?
Right. Right, exactly. So you are known around the world for your Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah.
When did the Sauvignon Blanc grapes get planted, and how did it become so popular and well known for Sauvignon Blanc?
Well, it was a case of sort of suck it and see, probably. Someone put in Sauvignon Blanc down here in the early 80s, and the wines that were made from those grapes had instant success, particularly in the UK.
Really?
And because it was so different, so fruit driven, but sort of light in style, easy to drink, could be used as an aperitif or an accompaniment to fish and sort of light dishes. Um, and it got some very, very good publicity because it was so different. And the difference, I think, has come about and still is because New Zealand has a very much a maritime climate. I mean, we're sitting in the middle of the Southern Ocean and we're a long, skinny ribbon of land. And um, that um, basically influences our climate hugely so that we don't get extreme temperatures because our vineyards are only, they're all within 10 or 15 miles of the coastline. Some of them are a lot closer, some are, but there's nothing more than about that distance. So the water temperature, which is not warm, influences obviously our climate. So that is one thing. The other thing is that Sauvignon Blanc and Marlborough seem to have be just a great match,
Yeah,
soil
synonymous.
wise and
Yes.
everything really just
Mhm.
fits.
Yeah, so it's a combination of the fact that you're a maritime climate, it's your soil, and it is a combination, sort of like the perfect storm
You've
of
got
a
it.
scenario that has
Yeah,
created this Sauvignon Blanc in that section of the world that's really exploded.
absolutely. Yes, yep. And it we have, I would suggest, a very reliable climate as well. We have a very, very dry autumn normally, so that's wonderful for
Mm.
ripening. And in our 50 years that we've been growing grapes, I can only remember probably two vintages that have been what I would call difficult, which is
Really? Only
which is
2 in
pretty,
50
yeah, which is
years?
pretty amazing, really. I mean, we've
Oh,
had
what you
some
were
that
lucky.
haven't been that great, but they haven't been disasters. You know, it's been,
Mm.
yeah. Generally, we have a very good climate. Yeah.
So for 50 years of winemaking, there had to have been some bumps in the road of creating this, epic brand. If you had to take me to your hardest year, which year would that be and what happened?
that, that was definitely 1995, which was we instead of our dry, beautiful autumn, it started raining about 6 weeks before we were due to start picking, and it
Mm,
just didn't stop. And we had a funnel of rain basically coming down from the north of Australia that was warm and wet, and it just kept on raining. That was a real disaster. But other than that, and bearing in mind, we didn't start making our own Wairau label until 1991 because
mhm.
originally the Mullaturgau, I had a I actually had a 15-year contract which ran from 1976, but we didn't have any grapes to supply in 1976 or 77. But that ran with Montana. And when that ran out, we actually had Sauvignon Blanc planted subsequent to the Muller, and we made our first Sauvignon Blanc in 1991, which basically won every accolade we could have here and in the UK.
In addition to creating this amazing wine for so long, you've also built this amazing family. Can you tell us a little bit about your family? And I think it's quite unique that so many of your family members work at the winery. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes, we've got five children, and at some point in time, they've all worked for us. They don't
Mm,
all necessarily work full time at the moment, but um, I've got two sons. Hamish, the older one, is the viticulturalist, and
mhm.
Sam is the winemaker for Sauvignon Blanc in particular. They've been working for me for 25 years.
Wow.
And Lindsay, who is our general manager, is
Uh-huh.
married to Pip, our oldest daughter, and Pip,
Oh my gosh.
she still works on and off for Wairau. Anna, my next daughter, she's doesn't, but she's lives in the district, has done in the past on and off. And Caroline is a chef who's the youngest, and she has been working in our restaurant at our cellar door for, uh, I don't know, 15 or 20 years as well.
Incredible. So what does it mean to you personally to have so many of your family members work alongside of you?
Oh, well, yeah, it's great. And that they all basically have different tasks. So we,
Mhm.
we try and avoid too much head on clash in that respect because people look after what they've got to look after, and that in itself, yeah, it works very well.
So you're saying there's no problems?
No, we have the odd one here and there, but it's pretty good. We've got the next generation of 12 grandchildren
Wow.
um, coming through. Lindsay and Pip's oldest son is doing a postgraduate winemaking course at Lincoln University, which is where I went as well.
Mhm.
Um, and he's starting that next year. So, yeah, they're coming through.
Amazing, amazing. So just out of curiosity, what is your favorite type of wine? And can you go through all of the different wines that Wairau River produces currently?
Well, my favorite, believe it or not, is Sauvignon Blanc.
Mhm.
It just
I
it
do believe it.
probably always has been, and it is so unique. But it's got its um, I think anyway. You can drink it as an aperitif. You can drink it with a lot of lighter dishes, particularly seafood. And being
Yeah, fish.
we spend a lot of time fishing as well as making wine, so we've got with the sea so close to us.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's just one of those things that um, yeah, I've always appreciated it and never really gone off it. So,
Mhm.
but other than Sauvignon Blanc, which obviously is the largest production section of our
Right,
winery
of
now,
course.
um, we make Chardonnay. Well, by volume, Pinot Noir is the next, which suits our district pretty well as well
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
we've got exactly the right climate for it, I think. Anyway,
Sure.
um, Chardonnay, and then we've got some Riesling, we've got a few sort of smaller varieties that we don't make any great variety of volume of, and we sell it at our cellar door. Um, Albarino, Viognier, Grüner Veltliner, um, Gewürztraminer. Yeah, that probably covers most of them. So we
Yeah,
do
that
have and it gives our winemakers in the winery something to, you know, do other than just make Sauvignon Blanc, because our Sauvignon Blanc, our white label, which is the one that we um, obviously is our number one blend, is basically 100% stainless ferment. So it's something that we find you can retain that freshness and so on with just a straight stainless ferment. So there's no oak in it.
you mentioned that at the very beginning, you had a consultancy with Montana, and they really probably helped you kind of find your footing in the winemaking business. I'm wondering now that you are such an established player in the Marlborough region, do you consult with other young winemakers? And what is the relationship with all of the wineries in Marlborough? Is it a community that really supports each other? Or if you could kind of talk a little bit about your relationship with other, winemakers and wineries around you.
Well, we initially had our wine made at another contract winemaking facility, which actually opened in 1991, which gave us the ability to make our own wine. And we became 25% shareholders in that business in 1995. And for the next 6 years, we made our wine there. And in 2002, we built our own winery on a completely different site and went holeless bowless on our own. Um, I think I'm not really aware of everyone. It's a pretty small community here. And
Hmm.
although we produce a lot of wine, everyone does, gets on pretty well with each other. And as for young winemakers coming through, I mean, we obviously employ, particularly over vintage, uh, a lot of extra. And wine, they're not just grunts, they often have quite a bit of winemaking experience as well. And sometimes they stay on, sometimes they move on to other places in Marlborough. There's a lot of them from overseas, from Europe and from the United States. And we've, I think everyone here is pretty good at fostering, um, younger people into better uh, skills in the winemaking business because it is such a young business in Marlborough that our
Hmm.
wineries are very, very, they're all up to date. I mean, our winery is as modern as you'd get if you built one today. I mean, it's got all the tech in it we require. So it's a great experience for a lot of them who have come out of more traditional winemaking um, countries that are probably still making good wine, but under a lot harder conditions.
On this podcast, we interview all sorts of entrepreneurs and founders and CEOs, people who have an idea and they're bringing it to life. We interview them about their journey, and then we always ask them to share some wisdom from their road. Both the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm wondering, I don't want to make this so exclusive to winemakers, but specifically business owners. You've been in business now for 5 decades. And I'm just curious, what advice would you give to the young business person, maybe a founder who is just getting started with their business that maybe has taken you years to learn?
Well, I think under the present day circumstances, I'd be not recommending that too many people jump into winemaking and so on. I mean, it's a very expensive business to enter into. I mean, our vineyards we're 100% estate grown in Wairau River, so we've got a huge capital outlay in vineyards, and our winery the same thing. So I think if you want to make a career of it, yeah, you have to start probably very, very cautiously and probably
Mm.
aim to be right up the top if you can do it. And basically, that's where you've got to be to try and sustain something that's going to keep going for a long, long time. Because unless you've got that quality and name, um, you're not going to survive. It's pretty tough going. I mean, it always has been. So yeah, that's what I would suggest is the best. Yeah, you're not going to fly into it and think you're going to make a fortune out of something and you go upside down the next, within a couple of years.
You and your wife have done a remarkable job of creating this winery and also raising your family alongside you. I'm sure their support has really helped tremendously. But what characteristics do you think a business person needs as they're just getting started?
Well, obviously, there are two things that if we're talking about in the winemaking business, they've obviously got to be conscious of the fact that they've got to produce a very good product, whether that's them doing it or whether they're employing someone else to do it. And the other thing is that um, they've got to be aware of when they have made that product that they've actually got to sell it and make money out of it. So
Hmm.
it's a those two things. If you're not going to
Hmm.
achieve those, you're not going to survive.
Yeah, no, that's essential, isn't it?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
gotta find a way to market it and make it not only drinkable but well known for being
yes.
as quality as the product that you've tried to create. I'm curious. I'd love to talk a little bit about the evolution of wine and specifically what you see as the future of wine. You know, there's the alcohol industry in general is sort of under siege in a lot of different ways. Winemaking as well. I just love to hear your perspective on the evolution over the years of the rise of wine and where you see it going.
Well, I think um, if we go back, a couple of thousand years, and we look at what was happening then, wine was a very consumable product back then. And I think it will continue. I agree with you entirely. It's very, very tough going at the moment, but it is for all alcohol products.
Hmm.
And um, I suspect that we've just got to hang in there. It's quality, quality, quality all the time. But I don't think you're going to get the wine industry is going to just suddenly keep falling it and finish up, flat on its back. That's it's survived for so long that I think we've just got to do everything probably that we can to encourage, particularly the younger generation who've got so much more choice now with all sorts of products that are on the market that are probably eking into the wine industry. That we've just got to make things more relevant and personable for them, so that they can actually enjoy drinking wine like we did when we were probably 40 or 50 years younger.
On to Dine For, we always ask people their favorite restaurant because I feel like it's a great way to get to know somebody, to understand what they love. I'd love to hear your favorite restaurant that perhaps is very close to the winery. And then I'd also like to hear about the restaurant that's on property at Wairau River. If you could talk to me about those two options.
Well, we have a very limited population in Marlborough. I mean, we're talking about 50,000 people max over a reasonable area. So we don't have a lot of restaurants in the district here. Um, we've got some good ones. I would like to single one out, but other than our own, which is now we have a chef who he's been in there nearly a year now because my daughter and her partner used to be the chefs in it, and he had a stroke about 18 months ago, which put him out of business as far as a chef was concerned. So we've now let the business to a well known chef from Blenheim who's doing a very, very good job in running the restaurant. It's still only a lunchtime restaurant because we're um, 15 or 12 or 15 k's out of town, which, getting there and back, you've got to either have a taxi or an Uber or something like that if you're open at night. So basically, we sell only our wines there still. That's part of the deal. And it's called Number 11 at Wairau River. Yeah, it's doing very, very well. So that continues. The restaurant was opened in 1992.
And why is
Yeah,
it called number 11?
because that's the number on the street that we're on. It's at the
Okay.
top of the
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
No secret meaning there, just the
No, no,
address.
no, nothing, nothing at all.
All right.
Because it was basically just called Wairau River Restaurant. And then
Yes.
when the new boy took it on, he decided to upmarket things a bit, and he's called it number 11, which is that's fine by us. That's working well.
And what kind of food? What are the specialties, or what should I order if I come to number 11?
Number 11, the food is very typically small dishes, so you can get virtually a bit of anything.
Hmm.
And it's not something that traditionally we have been serving there. It was more um, single plate, you know, traditional type restaurant fare. But I mean, small dishes is they're the big thing at the moment, so it seems. So that's what he's doing, and he's doing very very well with it. So you could order anything from seafood to meat dishes to you name it. They're all there, and but in small, yeah, small portions.
Phil, I love to hear about different people's schedule and like what their daily routines are. Do you have any daily routine or ritual that you do either in your personal life when you're not working or when you get to Wairau River that you could share?
Not really. I get up at 5:30 in the morning,
Mm,
and that's when the day starts, and that's probably the best part of it.
yes, I
And
love the
then
mornings too.
there's many and varied. I mean, I'm not that many years off 80, so I need to. I don't have any day to day responsibilities of running the winery anymore. Everyone else is doing it,
Hmm.
but I stay in touch. I like to come up to the winery at 10 o'clock and find out what's going on. I usually have a cup of coffee with a number of the key staff, and thereafter, I could be doing all sorts of things.
Well, let me stop you there because I think that's really important. I always think human connection is so vital, but it's also vital for you to understand what's going on in the business. And it's also vital for them to have that touch point with you, the founder. It sounds simple. Oh, I have coffee with some members of the key staff, but I imagine that's a very special time every day.
It is. Yeah,
Yeah.
I look forward to it, and they do too, because
Hmm.
it's quite a dynamic business to be in. Uh,
Hmm.
Things change quite dramatically from day to day often. Um, we've been faced with 15% tariffs from the US
You're right.
over the
Right.
last few months, and we've
Hmm.
had to work through that. And it's, yeah, it doesn't make things any easier, but you find a
Right.
way around it. And
Hmm.
yeah, no, it's good to have that contact. Absolutely.
What's your favorite part about being part of the wine business?
Well, I did used to like traveling up
Mm.
until probably 15 years ago. I did a lot of the overseas sales and marketing, but
Mm.
um, I suppose the older you get, the less um, appreciative you are of 12 and 15-hour flights. I don't care whether you're lying down or
Right.
what you're doing.
Right.
It, it is a waste of time as far as I'm concerned. So I now probably restrict myself to 3 or 4 or 5 hour flights. Oh, occasionally I
Yeah.
do more than that, but um,
Yeah.
I mean I haven't been to the mainland US. I've been to Hawaii this year, but I haven't been to mainland probably for 5 years.
Mm.
So I'm shrinking as in my travel experiences.
Well, I think that with your particular line of work, when you travel for work, you're not just selling something; you're actually an ombudsman for New Zealand, right? You're bringing a part of the New Zealand culture. You're not just selling an object or even a drink or a wine. You're sharing a part of the world, right? The banks of the Wairau River, what it means to be from New Zealand, what it means to be specifically from the South Island, the northern part of the South Island, all of that, not only what it looks like and feels like, but also what it tastes like. That must be, a huge responsibility and also kind of fun.
Yeah, it is, and
Yeah.
I remember when we first started doing extensive marketing in the US, which is in the late 90s, well, from 1996 onwards, basically. And how many people didn't know where New Zealand was when you were talking to them about?
Wow.
And they might have been restaurateurs, sommeliers. They thought
Amazing.
New Zealand was somewhere, most of them thought it was somewhere near Iceland for some reason or other,
Oh, my
which you couldn't be
gosh.
further away, really.
Right.
So
Right.
you'd have to start off explaining that to them. But I must admit, I think now probably most people do know where New Zealand is, but
Yes.
and particularly with in the last few years, we've had a much greater um, service from airlines, in particular US
Mm.
airlines into New Zealand, that really back in those early days, we had Continental, if you remember that. Maybe
Yes.
you're
Yes, I
too
do.
young.
No, I remember. I
We
remember
used to fly
Continental.
on Continental a lot because they
Uh-huh.
had a pretty good service. Obviously, not only between New Zealand and LA, but once you got there, you could go anywhere with them. So, um, but I think all those things have sort of, the world has basically got a bit smaller, I suppose, in that respect.
I think you're right. I think most people know where New Zealand is located, but I don't think they really understand the New Zealand culture. Do you?
No, and it is quite it's quite different, and I mean, our closest neighbours, Australia, um, we have a great rivalry with them, and a lot of people think that we've we get on very well with them, but in many ways they're a lot different. Climatically, they're hugely different,
Right.
and that breeds its own sort of individuals. If you're living in the north of Queensland, you're going to be totally different from someone who's living in Tasmania. And believe it or not, Tasmania, they're making some great wines, very similar to Marlborough here. Their climate wise, they're influenced by the Southern Ocean.
Yeah, well, I studied my junior year of college. I studied in Perth, Australia, so I'm very familiar with Margaret River
Yes,
region of wine. And we did go to Tasmania, so I actually I can say I've been to Tasmania, which I thought was quite beautiful.
yeah,
I
it
was
is.
really it's quite a place, but and so is New Zealand. New Zealand is so spectacular. It might be one of the most beautiful places I think I've ever been. Was the South Island of New Zealand. It's
Mm,
just such rugged, jaw-dropping beauty. If anyone's listening and has any inclination to travel, it really is
yeah,
so
you've
so
got it
pretty.
right, Kate. The South Island is a lot better than the North Island, scenery wise, because we have because we've got this Southern Alps that run right the whole length of the South Island, basically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the North Island's pretty too. I mean, Rotorua and Whakatane, and we went up Coromandel or Coromandel. I went up
Coromandel,
into that
yes,
area.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, very pretty. But you're right. When you're talking about the real cinematic beauty of New Zealand, it is the South Island, no
mm,
doubt.
yeah, without doubt.
Yeah. We talked about the what was great about winemaking and what you love, about the job. What has been the hardest part? If you had to pinpoint what has been the most difficult part of this journey?
Well, probably in the early days, we planted everything on its own roots. And in the late 80s, we had a phylloxera infestation in Marlborough. And that was quite difficult. I was actually the president of the local grape growers association, and we had about, I think, from memory, 40 or 50 members by that point in time. So it was expanding quite rapidly,
Mm.
and basically we had to replace all our vineyards that were on their own roots, but that wasn't necessarily a bad thing because it meant that we were replacing them not only on rootstock that was resistant to phylloxera, but with varietals that were more akin to what we knew Marlborough could do, because we, by that
Mm.
point, had, about 12 or 15 years of growing experience that showed us what we could do best and probably what didn't do so well here. And there were some varieties that were planted here that required longer ripening periods than we could do in Marlborough, and so on, that were originally planted and then were ripped out during that period. And fortunately, Sauvignon Blanc had become something that was um, well known in a lot of places in the world and had a lot of potential. So that's basically what got planted. But that's probably the hardest period we had from because it was quite a costly exercise as well. Obviously, through lack of production, while you pulled phylloxerated vines out and put new ones in, not only the cost of the vines and the grafts, which compared with straight unrooted cuttings that we used to plant, that literally costs you nothing other than gathering them off the vines. So that was a pretty big change.
You strike me as a very calm, even keeled person and I'm guessing that has served you quite well as a businessman through all the ups and downs of the winemaking business. Would you say, am I accurate in that or am I way off base?
No, you're pretty accurate. You don't need to get too excited and upset about too many things. No,
Mm.
you've just got to work through them.
Yeah, well, I mean that's a quality that not everybody has that I think would be essential for the ups and downs of entrepreneurship and business. I'm curious as our time comes to a close here. Here you sit with this wonderful business, amazing family. What would you like your legacy to be as the founder of Wairau River Winery?
Well, I'd like to think that we've put the building blocks in place, and the next generation hopefully will just continue it. But
Yeah.
that would be that would be our aim. But if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, well, so be it.
Back to the personality, back to
Yeah,
this wonderful, life is coming at you and you handle whatever comes your way.
yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you don't know from one day to the next quite what's going to happen. So
Mm.
you've just got to be prepared and chilled out, I suppose.
Yes, yes. In the US, it's the Marine Corps motto, which is improvise, adapt, overcome.
Absolutely, you've got it.
Yes.
I've never been in
Yeah.
the Marines here, but it's good. That's a good one. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh, well, Phil, I've enjoyed this so much. It's wonderful, wonderful to meet you. Thank you for your support of To Dine For, and I wish Wairau River and you and your family continued success.
Well, thank you very much, Kate. No, it's been great. Anytime.